because we're going to be looking at one of life's toughest questions. We're going to ask, why should I work so hard? In Ecclesiastes, Solomon asked this question 4 times at least. It's a good question. Look with me at Ecclesiastes 2, verse 22. What does a man get for all his hard work? Yeah, just why should I work so hard? Solomon says there are 2 extreme responses to this question. The first response, number 1 in your notes, is the lazy worker, the work avoider. This guy doesn't want to do anything. In fact, he's allergic to work. He doesn't believe in it. It's against his religion to work. My motto in life, he says, it's better to have loafed and lost than never to have loafed at all. Nothing, no please. Ecclesiastes 4, verse 5, where Solomon says the fool won't work. Note that he says he won't work, not that he can't work. And almost starves, but feels it's better to be lazy and barely get by than to work hard. The other extreme, Solomon says, number 2 in your notes, that's the workaholic. This guy won't stop working. He doesn't know how to stop. He just keeps on going and going and going. That is all he lives for. Look at what Solomon says in Ecclesiastes 4, verse 8. Here is a man who is always working, never satisfied with the wealth he has. For whom is he working so hard and denying himself any pleasure? This is a useless, it's a miserable way to live. So this is the workaholic. Now, which of these 2 extremes do you tend to lean toward? Would you say I tend to be an overworker, or I tend to be an underworker? Do you tend to do more than expected or more than you need to do? Or do you tend to get by with little as possible? But regardless of which end of the spectrum you're on, Solomon has something to say to you, because in Ecclesiastes, God's Word talks about both. So today we're going to look at 6 biblical roads to success by Solomon for those who need to work better. And then 3 remedies for those who need to work less. First of all, number 1 in your notes. In these 6 biblical roads to success, Solomon says it's not how much you work, but how you work that determines whether you're a success or not in life. But you will remember that Solomon, he was the most successful man who ever lived. He achieved everything that he'd ever wanted, had more wealth than anybody ever amassed. He was an incredible achiever. So when Solomon talks about success, we're not talking about someone who is a fluke. Solomon knows what he's talking about. And he says it's not how much you work, it's how you work that makes the difference. Look at 6 characteristics with me. In your notes, number 1, work enthusiastically. If you're going to be successful, work with enthusiasm. Look at Ecclesiastes 9, verse 10. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with what? All your might. He is saying in your notes, put your heart into it. Give it your best effort. Whether it's a big job or a little job, have a positive attitude. Emerson once said, there's no great accomplishment without enthusiasm. So Solomon says, work enthusiastically. Number 2 in your notes, Solomon says, work with integrity. If you're going to last, you have to work with integrity. Look at Ecclesiastes 7, verse 1. He says, a good reputation is better than expensive perfume. What's he talking about there? In your notes, he's saying it's better to be good than to smell good. You see, perfume wears off. but a reputation with integrity lasts and lasts. Have you ever noticed how unrealistic perfume ads are on television? If you wear a certain perfume, you're guaranteed success or fame or a great sex life or money. Why do you watch those kind of ads? I watch them for sermon illustrations. Solomon is saying that the real success is a matter of character. In 1982, they did a study of 300 salesmen from 11 different companies. And 50% were on the top performers, 50% were average. And they compared them to find out what made them top achievers. The conclusion was there's no difference in skill, ability, intellect, technical understanding between the top performing salesmen and the average ones. But the difference they found was that the top performers, they all had a reputation for integrity. See, their customers trusted them. They bought more. So we need to work, number one, with enthusiasm, number two, with integrity, number three in your notes. The third road to success, we need to work skillfully. We need to work skillfully if we're going to be successful. Look at Ecclesiastes 10, verse 10. If the axe is dull, its edge unsharpened, more strength is needed, but skill will bring success. Solomon is saying that you need to sharpen your axes. Work smarter, not harder. In your notes, always be improving. Always be growing. Always be developing. Sharpen your skills. I read an article that was a key to minimizing the risk of being laid off. It was always to be improving your skills. See, the theory was that the dinosaurs went extinct because they couldn't change. They couldn't adapt to a changing environment. Do you have any dinosaurs at your work? Today, in 2019, the average worker has to assimilate 24 times the amount of information compared to just 10 years ago. So you work skillfully. Number four in your notes, the fourth road to success. Solomon says, work efficiently. If you're going to succeed, you work efficiently. You need to economize your time, your energy. Look at Ecclesiastes 8, verse 6. There's a right time and a right way to do everything. So in your notes, achievers just manage their time. Today, time is much more important and more valuable than even your money. So you need to set some goals and set some priorities. Do the appropriate thing at the appropriate time. Avoid doing only those urgent things. To be effective, work efficiently. In fact, only 2% of the people in America think enough about their lives to actually sit down and write down some goals. In your notes, number 5, the fifth road to success, work cooperatively. If you're going to succeed, Solomon says, we are to work cooperatively. In other words, don't do it all yourselves. You need to build a team. You need to involve other people. You know the kind of person who says, it's just easier to do it myself. Wrong road to success, Solomon says. You need to involve other people. Look at Ecclesiastes 4, verses 9 and 10, where he writes, 2 are better off than 1, because together they can work more effectively. If one then falls down, the other can help him up. We all know that we need support over the long haul. Remember Jesus when he sent out his disciples. And you notice he sent them out how? In 2s. And we invite people to participate in prayer support for those who are going through difficulties, because they too need support. We invite people to join our Stephen Ministry training program so they can be helpful to others who are experiencing challenges in their lives and who need someone to support them. Success is never a one-man show. And number 6 in your notes, the 6th road to success, work persistently. Solomon says we are to work persistently. Don't give up too soon. There is power in persistence. Notice what Solomon says, that's Ecclesiastes 11, verse 6. He says, keep on sowing your seed, for you never know which will grow. Perhaps it all will. So don't give up. The difference between successful and unsuccessful, in your notes, successful people fail. Just as much as average people do. But in your notes, they just do not quit. They learn from it. They learn what doesn't work. They have the ability to keep on going even 5 minutes more. Sort of like that guy who was wooing his girlfriend to marry him. And he sent for 47 days in a row a hand-delivered rose to her door. Well, that's persistence. And it worked. On the 48th day, she married the delivery man. Be persistent. Here are some facts about failures. The best NBA basketball players make only about half of their shots. The greatest quarterbacks complete in the NFL only 6 out of 10 passes. Major League Baseball players make it to first base only 40% of the time, and that even includes base on balls. Oil companies find oil on an average only 1 out of every 10 oil wells. That's only a 10% success rate. Actually, it's a 90% failure rate. TV actors average 29 audition rejections before being hired for a part or commercial. What we're saying is that if you don't at first succeed, welcome to the human race. That's part of life. So if you tend to need to work better, take this list, pin it to your mirror or to your refrigerator. Use it as a daily checklist. Compliments of Solomon, who happened to be the wisest and most successful man who ever lived. 6 ways to work. However, most of you don't really need any more success through hard work. Most of you tend to lean towards workaholism. You need to learn to slow down. So I want to spend the rest of our time on 3 remedies for workaholism. See, contrary to what the Japan may think about us, Americans are hard workers. A study revealed that 24% of the American workforce would like to work longer hours in order to make more money. Would you agree that today most adults are finding it necessary to work even 2 jobs or to have both spouses working? It is incredible what the expectations are just to make a living. But the problem is that workaholic parents tend to produce workaholic children. The disease can be passed on. So please join with me as we look at what Solomon tells us. 3 remedies for this problem. In your notes, number 1, readjust my values. Solomon gets right to the point here. He says, here's the real reason people work. Look with me at Ecclesiastes 4, verse 4. He says, I've learned why people work so hard to succeed. It's because they what? Envy the things their neighbors have. Solomon here exposes the real motive behind a lot of workaholism today. He says it's not a desire for excellence. It's not even a matter of enjoyment. He said it's out of envy. He said the sole goal of life is just to keep up with the competition. Keep up with the Joneses. Be number 1. It involves covetousness and envy. So the cost of workaholism is really enormous. The cost includes divorces, alcohol abuse, heart attacks, other physical illnesses, fragmented relationships. So why do so many work so hard in our society today? We actually reward workaholism. You know, each year Time magazine selects a man of the year. A couple years ago they selected Ted Turner. He was the archetype of workaholics. And why was he chosen as man of the year? Because he lived a tortured life. He worked just to please his dad, who happened to be an unpleasable father. He freely admits that. And even in his sports interests, he was doing it out of competition. We reward workaholism in our society. So Solomon says the first remedy for workaholism must readjust my values. So notice what Jesus says in Mark 8, verse 36. And these words would be in red in your red letter challenge studies. Let's read that verse together out loud. What good is it for a man to gain the whole world, yet forfeit his soul? What can man give in exchange for his soul? Jesus is saying there that we need to stop. We need to ask, why am I doing this? In fact, there are 3 questions there that we need to ask ourselves. Number 1 in your notes, we need to ask ourselves, why am I working so hard? We need to do a motive check. What drives me to do this? Is it greed for more money? Is it envy? In your notes, number 2, the second question is the payoff worth it? Is it worth sacrificing my life for? Most probably it isn't. And number 3, in your notes, why do I think the next level will satisfy me? See, if I'm not satisfied with what I have now, what makes me think that the next level is going to be more satisfying? See, Solomon reminds us, in spite of all our hard work, there's nothing we can take with us. So we need to readjust our values from the temporal to the eternal. We need to work hard for the eternal goals, for things that will last. So readjust my values. Number 2 in your notes, the second remedy for workaholism. Anticipate God's care. So I readjust my values, but then I trust God's care. The root of a lot of workaholism today is worry. Look at Matthew 6, 31 and 32. Don't worry, saying, what shall we eat or drink or wear? For pagans run after these things. Your heavenly Father knows that you need them. So Jesus says there that God knows that you need these things. But he says pagans run after. What's Jesus talking about there? He's talking about the rat race we're in. He's talking about the frantic drive to always get more. A lot of our workaholism today is rooted in worries. I've had to keep working so that I can build up my pile, or that my pile can be big enough so I can feel secure. Or in your notes, the question says, are you financially secure? So your pile will never be big enough. Never. And Jesus is telling us that we need to trust in God's care and not but trust in our finances. God's care can never be taken away from us. Then in your notes, number 3, a third remedy for workaholism is to exchange my pressures that I have for God's peace. I must have Jesus at the center of my life. Jesus alone can do that exchange, exchanging my pressures for God's peace. So look at what Jesus says to us, Matthew 11, verse 28 and 30. In fact, let's read those verses together out loud. Come to me, you who are tired from carrying your heavy loads. I will give you rest. The yoke I'll give you is easy, and the load I'll put on you is light. Circle those 2 words, easy and light, because God says that Jesus came to give you a lifestyle that is easy and light. And if you are carrying a burden each day that's not easy and it's not light, then no, it's not from God. It's that simple. It's really out of God's will. It's out of God's will for your life. Because God says, my yoke is easy and my plan for your life is light. And I will give you rest. So readjust your values. Anticipate God's care. Exchange your pressures for God's peace. And Jesus says, come to me and I will give you rest.